The Power Moms Network, empowering moms to lift the world.
Welcome. I'm Riley Karsh.
I'm Tova Kopan.
We are thrilled to bring you the We Go Boldly podcast.
Let's talk big burning questions, life changes, and maybe a bit of personal business.
Let's be bold and brave together. Are you ready?
I am. Here comes the show.
Hello, and welcome to We Go Boldly, the podcast where we celebrate women stepping into their power and living their most authentic lives. We are also thrilled to be a part of the Power Moms Network. At Power Moms Network, we are empowering moms and creating a community of mothers mentoring other moms to greatness. Very cool place to be. Come check us out over there. Join the community if you're a mom or mom adjacent, which we all are, and see what that's all about. Also, I love to remind you guys, because it is so important to my own life, and I know Tova's, we have our weekly women's circle. We meet every Wednesday at 1 Eastern time, and it is just like the most supportive, most uplifting place to be. I know I'm biased because Tova and I run it, but I promise you, it is so much fun. It's great for your spirit, your soul, all the things. So you can find out more about it on our website at goboldlyinitiative.com/weekly circle. I think that's all the intro stuff, and I didn't stumble too much, so I'm calling that a win. That's my celebration this week. Let me get Tova on with us, and we'll kick it off. How are you today, Tova? What's going on?
I'm a little flustered. I'm not going to lie. We are recording this at noon. I am looking at my breakfast, and it is one of my favorite breakfasts. I have not actually eaten it yet. So my internet has been a little shoddy, and I have been working on it since this morning, like literally on my walk with my dogs. And I have the tendency, when you're doing like a live chat with somebody, of forgetting that I'm on a live chat. So it wasn't until like 20 minutes before the recording that I was like, no, seriously, I have to take a shower. I have to get coffee. I have to go to the bathroom. I have to get my breakfast, because I was so afraid if I walked away from the chat that I would forget that I was on the chat because of past history of me forgetting that I was on a chat. And so I have the breakfast. It's looking great. It's blueberries, it's yogurt, it's granola. It's my dream. It's my dream breakfast.
And it's mocking you from your desk,
And
which is
yeah,
nice.
I should actually put it behind.
Yes, so you don't have to look at it.
And the Wi-Fi is still not fixed. I was happy to hear, though. We'll end on a high note before I introduce our guest, because I'm really excited to introduce her. I was just waiting for him to be like, you need to upgrade. And I'm sure there's something I'm going to have to pay for.
Sure.
But what he said was, it's not getting the most out of your like gigabyte that you're paying for.
Okay.
And I was like, well, that's good. That's good. Because I'm paying for like a lot of one
like it could be
gigabyte, but that's like a lot.
Better.
Yeah.
It is a lot, right?
Yeah, it feels, I don't know, but they tell me it is. So anyway, listen, if it's not enough, then my kids need to get off their devices. Is my take home. So anyway, I'm a little out of sorts. Also, just as a quick aside, because there's got to be someone else out there like me. I like black coffee. I'll drink it. I like coffee with milk or cream. I like coffee with everything.
Yeah.
I don't like coffee with sugar, like just sweet coffee. And without
What about
milk.
like a coffee? Oh, okay, without milk. I was going to say, what about like a mocha frappuccino?
Yeah, no,
or
that's
something?
great. But I don't like
So
it
it's just
without
black
the milk.
coffee with sugar.
And I forgot that we ran out.
Here.
Yep, I forgot we ran out of milk. So I'm also drinking a coffee that just has a little sweeten in it. And I'm just like, what's happening today?
It's
anyway,
an upsetting day.
But I'm really excited because I'm super excited. I put together the bio today, and I'm really excited to talk to our guest. So let me introduce our guest today. So today we are talking to Sarah Wilson, and I had to force myself to not include her whole bio, because I was like, no, we can't include it. I want to hear her story. I don't want to tell everything about her, but I'll tell you a little bit about Sarah Wilson. Sarah is a heart attack survivor, type 1 diabetic, and the voice behind Everything's Messy podcast. Her journey into wellness didn't begin with a textbook or certification. It started with a journey to the ER, hooked up to machines, and staring down a future she wasn't sure she had. Diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at 15, she spent years chasing stability in a body that did not play by the rules. But it wasn't until she suffered a heart attack before the age of 43 that she slammed into a wake-up call that changed everything. And now that's how the Everything's Messy podcast was born. There's a whole paragraph there in the middle, but I want to hear her tell us about that paragraph. From there, Everything's Messy Wellness took shape, and she is turning it into her mission into something tangible where real conversations can lead to real change. We are so excited to have Sarah join us. So with that, we want to welcome you, Sarah. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. And I have to say, I just love like all of the details you gave of your morning because you know what that is? That's messy. And
Yes.
I love, no, that's real. I
Yeah.
don't know about you guys. I am so sick and tired of the picture perfect Instagrams with all of this stuff. Like that just spoke to me. I loved it. And because I love mess. Who hasn't been messy or isn't still messy a time in their life, right?
We have to embrace it, right?
Well,
Because
my
it's
morning
like
is a tribute to you.
I'll take it. I will
yeah.
take it.
Well, welcome to the show.
Thank you both for
We
having me.
are thrilled that you're here, that you're talking to our listeners, and we're going to start you off with sort of a broad question of obviously from your bio, your vision for your future was maybe at 15 was not what it is today. So talk to us a little bit about like maybe like the before and after, like before all that happened, did you have like a clear path you were going on and then you took a right turn when you thought you'd take a left, or just talk us through a little bit of that history and what that looks like for you.
Yes to all of that. My whole life has been that, right? If
Yeah.
you want to hear God laugh, tell him your plans because it's just not going to work out how you thought it was going to. So, yeah, I thought I was going to join the Air Force. I thought I was going to travel the world. I thought I was going to do all those things. And, come to find out when I got my first diagnosis, yeah, military will not accept you with that. And I think they have sort of changed their policy now, but back in the 90s, that wasn't the case. So, my favorite word is shivot. You have to pivot and shift. So I shivot. My whole life I've been shiveting. And you just kind of learn to sort of, okay, adapt and move on. And what are you going to do? But with that came a lot of rebellion and anger. And, being that age, who remembers at 15, you didn't like anybody or anything, right? Let alone now you have this chronic diagnosis that you have to sort of live with, whether you like it or not. And so I had a lot of anger, a lot of frustration, a lot of just, I don't want to say hate, but it was just like, well, what am I supposed to do now? What does this mean? And I didn't give myself enough time to not only be educated about the diagnosis, but to process what had actually happened. And so that just led to years of almost rebellion against myself. I wasn't monitoring my blood sugars like I should have. I wasn't dealing with stress or coping with anything. And it was just like, if I ignore this, maybe it'll just go away, which obviously is not. It's not the case. So, with that, I was told early on that, think Steel Magnolias, if you've seen that movie, I shouldn't have children. Not that I couldn't, but I shouldn't. And so that shaped my whole brain as far as, now I'm going to take control and just say, well, I never wanted children in the first place, which was totally not the case. But I had to do something with that pain. I had to do something to take the power back and be like, well, no, this is going to be my decision. You're not going to tell me that I can't have kids. And so again, having to shiv it again and all of these things happening and then wonderfully finally being blessed to have children at the late age of 31, which was considered a high risk pregnancy and all of these things, which just compounded till 6 days before I turned 43 years old, had a massive heart attack. It wasn't because of high blood pressure. It wasn't because of high cholesterol. It was strictly because of I ignored basically my blood sugar regulation and copious amounts of stress from not taking care of myself. And if I can just talk to all the moms, all of the caretakers, not even moms specifically, but anybody who is in the capacity to care for somebody, it's such a labor of love and that's great. But if you don't put yourself first, you aren't going to have anything to give. And that's what happened. And now 3 years post attack, I've, educated myself. I've learned so much. I dealt with some of that anger. I dealt with all of those things. And I feel like now I want to scream from the mountaintops what I've learned and just give back what I can because it was not good for a long time.
I have so many questions. like, I don't even know. And some of them are like big sweeping questions. And some of them are even just like, I think it's so important that women understand what a heart attack feels like. So I know that we probably want to start like back when you were 5. I know that Riley has questions that is going to be like, tell me about when you were a kid, and I care about those questions too. But I do just want to take a minute so that we don't forget them, because I imagine that you have learned like what if you feel comfortable talking about it, like what did your heart attack feel like, and
Absolutely.
how did you know to go to the ER? Because I had an experience and it was not a heart attack. It turned out to be an anxiety attack. But I have had the experience of being on the phone texting, I think Riley
Yep.
and another friend, and we're looking up the symptoms of a women's heart attack. And it's like, well, if your left pinky is a little pink, it might be a heart attack. I mean, it's insane.
Yeah,
So
it's
I would
insane.
I
Yeah.
would love to know your experience, just because I think it's so important that we educate ourselves, because women ignore so much.
100%. So let's start with the boring statistics first. And I say this just because it is so important. One and two women will get heart disease. Doesn't necessarily mean you'll have a heart attack, but that is the precursor to having a heart attack. That's 1 and 2. It's 1 and 3 for breast cancer. And we need to have that education for breast cancer by far, but 1 and 2 for heart disease. For men, it's 1 and 3. So that right there is a huge statistic that women are not paying attention to. On top of, you asked about the symptoms or what I had. I thought I was having an anxiety attack too. There were no symptoms. I had no headache, no jaw pain, no arm pain, no chest pain, nothing. There was nothing that I had other than I was a little extra tired. And who has, as moms, is not a little extra tired, right? It was because my oldest daughter said to me, and she thought it might have been diabetic related. So she says, this is a Sunday, and she says to me, she's 16 at the time, Mom, I just think you should go to the hospital and figure out what's going on. I would rather tell my brother and my sister that you just had to step out and take care of yourself than explain why the firemen are coming through the house because you're unconscious on the bathroom floor. Literally out of the words of Babes. That is what she said. And you kind of have to take a moment and just grasp that and think, first, she just became smarter than I did. And second, you have to take it seriously. You really do. So did I ask for help? Did I go to the neighbor and say, hey, can you look at it? And again, she was 16 and watching her younger brother and sister. It was okay, but didn't ask the neighbor to drive me, didn't ask for help, didn't call a friend. I drove myself to the emergency room. And all the way there, the narrative in my head playing is, you silly woman, they're going to tell you you're having an anxiety attack and send you on your way. Literally, that's what I thought they were going to tell me. Until I walked in and they did the triage and hooked me up to the EKG machine. And if you know anything about heart waves, it's supposed to be rolling hills that go like that. Mine was inverted. It was upside down W's. And having an EMT background, when I saw that, it was almost like an outer body experience. Like, that's not me. Like, what's happening? Your machine's wrong. What's going on? He disappeared, came back with about 9 medical personnel. I was stripped down, put double IVs in, and I was sent off to the cath lab because this was now my new reality. And in that moment, it was so crushing because you think, did I just kiss my kids goodbye for the last time? Did I just say goodbye on the telephone to my husband, who, by the way, at the time was out of state? Like, all of these things just come crashing, and you're kind of left to sit in that mess that partially I had created. And there's nobody but you, and you kind of have to face the music, right?
It is so life altering to be in that situation. I haven't had a heart attack, but I had a life threatening situation. And to be in that situation as a woman, as a mom, as a human being, but certainly as a woman, where you are often dismissed and disregarded, right? Your pain is not real pain. Your symptoms are not real symptoms, all of those things. It is so terrifying, overwhelming, traumatizing. I don't know. There's a lot of ing words that I think apply in that scenario. And thank God you had people, or that you listened to your daughter, right? Like, because sometimes our kids say stuff and we're like, yeah, okay. I'm trying to do stuff here. And you got the help you needed. I mean, it is, you spend a lot of time after that kind of, and all three of us have been in these sort of scenarios. You spend a lot of time after that going, like, what if I did this differently? Or what if I did this differently? And whether it's, quote, self-inflicted or not, which I would dispute that. But you spend a lot of time reflecting. And I think it can be good and it can be bad. And it sounds like for you, the reflection has been good. So talk to us about what that, and I do want to talk about your childhood because I always want to ask people about their childhood trauma because I'm a weirdo. But
That's great.
let's talk about what happened after, right? Like that event happened. Obviously, it was terrifying, right? Like there's no way around that. What happened after? Did you have the 5 stages of grief? Did you have like, okay, I'm going to get a therapist, I'm going to deal with my anger, and I'm going to like get a nutritionist, and I'm going to get these 12 people, and we're going to fix this? Like, what was the aftermath?
I mean, yes, all of the above, but in stages. I had to move in. For me, it was very small doses because I found myself that the very littlest thing was completely overwhelming. And if I just went too hard too quickly, I probably wouldn't have absorbed any of it. So I knew myself well enough to be like, little baby steps, little baby steps. And at the time, we were living in Colorado, and there was this program at the hospital called the Ornish program. And if you're not familiar, it's basically a complete lifestyle change. You go through how to exercise correctly, how to meditate, how to, we had group therapy. And then the last course of that was obviously how to eat well. And while I obviously, we can all use improvement in eating, it was really hard for me to grasp what they were talking about. And again, I can say this because I've been both, but they were presenting a vegan lifestyle, and I've spoken to many vegans and it's done wonders for them. That was not my experience. And because I had to add insulin to whatever I was eating, when the nutritionist would sit down and say, here's your meal, but it's 80 carbs, so you're going to have to bolus for that many carbs. I couldn't understand, like I needed more education for not only my first diagnosis, but how eating 80 carbs at one meal was going to help me. So I kind of had to strip everything back. And it wasn't that I didn't believe what they were saying, because again, I've spoken to many vegans where it has worked for them. But for me, I knew something was not correct, again, especially with having to take insulin to absorb food. So I had to just go down this very beginner generic way of like, what is food? How does it give us energy? As a type 1, what specifically do I need? What is my digestive system? It was just very, very basic stuff that I would just sort of start piecemealing together on top of the therapy, on top of learning. I say this all the time and people laugh at me. I didn't know how to breathe properly. Now, all of the people in your audience that are breathwork experts, I was not. I was a very shallow breather. I had no idea that it actually could change your, psyche to learn how to breathe properly. So when I was able to start doing that, and again, I know it sounds crazy, but just taking these big belly breaths and like I could feel it in my head, like, oh, that's not so heavy. Oh, that's not. And just learning that practice and then adding other modalities on top of that. Again, small little chunks, one at a time, trying to build this. And when I finally got to the end of that, it was like, and not thinking that I'm the smartest person in the world by any means, but it was like, I need to share this. I feel like other people need to know this. So that sort of took me down, well, learn more about this, learn more about, and so I just kept going, and I'm still going. I'm sort of a nerd in that way. I have to soak up what I can.
Love it.
I think even when like about breath work and stuff, I mean, Riley and I were just the other day, we were working on something, and it was a frustrating process. And I took a deep breath, and we both have people in our lives who sometimes breathe in passive aggressive ways. And so
we do. And how you put that.
We do. And passive aggressive breathing is the worst.
And so I clarified, I said, just to be clear, I said that was a deep breath because I realized I just hadn't taken one in a while. Like sometimes you realize that like all your breathing is very shallow.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, when is the last time like I actually took a breath?
Yeah.
And I was like, so that breath I wasn't stressed. Or maybe I was stressed, but I wasn't like letting frustration. I was literally just taking a deep breath.
Well, and the great part about it is it triggered me to take a deep breath because I was like, oh, And then I'm, like sucking in oxygen and like, have I been holding my breath? That's so weird.
Yeah. And I mean, it really does go to like being a parent or especially a mother when you're like, did we just have to remind ourselves to take a deep breath?
100%. And I think that, going back to my journey really quick, I think that was what kind of I had to pay attention to it because like a lot of moms, and it's not a spiteful thing or anything on purpose or a martyr thing. It's just we put ourselves last. We make sure everybody else is taken care of because that's sort of how we're wired, right? That's our DNA to be that person, which is fine. But there has to be, and I hate the word balance, but there has to be some sort of give and take, some sort of ebb and flow with that. And I think what I was realizing was I was so grateful that I had the opportunity to have my children after being told for so many years that I couldn't, that I put everything that I was into them. And I didn't know how to properly take care of myself, including a breath. Like, that's just so silly, right?
Oh, I have a question.
Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say, let's take a quick break. And then
Okay.
when we get back, Riley, you can ask your
Okay.
question.
Well, hello there, ladies. Are you ready to elevate your life and connect with like-minded souls? Join us every week at the Go Boldly Together weekly Women's Circle, where strength meets sisterhood. Dive into empowering discussions, share your victories, and navigate challenges together. Our circle is a safe space for growth and inspiration. Experience the power of collective wisdom and unleash your full potential. Don't miss out on the transformative energy. Click the link in our show notes or visit us at goboldlyinitiative.com/women's weekly group to learn more about our Go Boldly Circle today. Together, let's embrace the journey of personal development and let's celebrate that unstoppable force within each of us. Okay, so welcome back to the show. Before the break, we were talking, and now I'm going to ask you about your childhood trauma. No, what you said made me about, as moms, we are kind of hardwired to put ourselves last. We're also culturally conditioned to put ourselves last. To be very clear, this culture puts moms on a pedestal, but at the back. And so let's talk about like your family dynamics and how you grew up and like what was modeled for you and sort of how you are changing that for your kids and so what they can see happening in your life. And how do you deal with all of that? Because I know a lot of people talk about mom guilt and talk about feeling like, they're failing in some way because they're not giving their kids every single thing. And just to add to that, because I haven't asked enough questions all at once, we also just talked to somebody and, how do we raise kids who aren't entitled, right? Like, because we're hopefully raising our kids like in a better environment than we were raised in with a broader understanding than our parents had, like, because that's the goal, and that's the goal our parents hopefully had, was to give us a better start, and then and then it ripples forward. So talk to us a little bit about that aspect of your journey and what that's looked like.
Absolutely. So first, let me just completely agree. Those mom guilt demons, they are 100% real. And I feel like sometimes they can be all consuming and eat you up. So there's this, exercise that I tell people to do where you kind of have to just lock that guilt up for a little bit and actually be able to discern what's in front of you and what's important. That's number one, right? Childhood, yes, it was the complete opposite of what I became as a mom, right? I was the actual caretaker in the mother-daughter relationship. And I was the oldest of four. And so I had to grow up very, very quickly and I had to be the caretaker, right? And so I knew in my own family that I wanted to make sure all of their needs were always met because mine were not, right? So, you know, parents were divorced, all of the things. And so that really did play a big role in not only wanting to break the generational cycles and break, mother-daughter cycles and all those kinds of things, but to make sure my kids never wanted for no, like that was a big thing. You talk about raising entitled kids. One of the biggest, greatest things that came out of this experience was, and there was a learning curve, don't get me wrong, but, in the beginning, the resistance of mom needs to go exercise. Mom needs to go take a break. Mom needs to go do breathing. And again, resistance definitely, well, can't we do this? Can't we, and just setting those clear boundaries. And again, was not, I still have to remind myself how to do it. It's not perfection, right? It's consistency. And so as soon as I got sort of in the habit of setting those boundaries and actually being okay with those boundaries, my kids now see, and of course, it's been 3 years post heart attack. So it's been a long, them having to relearn some things, but they now, hey, I need to go take a break. Or, mom, have you done your breathing today? Or, hey, can we help you with this? And it's just sort of shifted. And it's like, wow, my kids were capable all along. And I never gave them that authority to do that because I was doing everything for them. Come to find out, they don't need me to. Now, granted, at this time, my kids are, much older now. My oldest is 20, my middle's 15, and my youngest is 13. So they're, relatively able to care for themselves. But still thinking, I'm not doing enough. I have to do more. But realizing and watching them coming into their own, it's like, I think I'm doing a, fairly good enough job because look, they're getting it. They understand and now they're doing it. My son is really getting into sports. My daughter's really into volleyball and they're like, "Oh, we have to go, walk for 30 minutes or we have to do this." And it's like, wow, did I just help them make sure that they take care of their mental state too? I mean, probably giving myself more credit than necessary, but at least the seed has been planted, right?
I think you get all the credit. Like don't sell yourself short. I think as parents, especially moms, I mean, not always, but often we don't get enough credit for what we do. And when we learn how to set boundaries, it makes our kids feel safe, right? It makes them feel secure. And
What an epiphany. Like what an like here I'm thinking, oh, my babies, I need all that. No, they are capable. And I was actually feeling like maybe I had insulted them because I didn't feel that way. And that was a big learning period for me as well.
Mm.
Yeah, and I think I know, we are right now where we are, we're still in the midst of school. We still have a month left of school here, or almost a month. And we're in the middle of baseball and all soccer. It's just like running, running, running. And my 11-year-old, I had the gall to sit down in front of my computer for about 1 minute the other day. And I needed to turn it on and let some emails I wrote leave the outbox because I wrote them where I didn't have internet because I was taking him to a doctor's appointment. And he was trying to get to a baseball game and he goes, "Mom, this isn't a time to rest." And I was just like, "Go to the car. Go to the car. Like just right now."
And lock yourself in so I can't get to you.
Protect yourself immediately.
And we had a conversation and I was like, first, let me say, like, there's nowhere I'd rather be. Like, I am there. I love cheering for you. I truly believe it is a gift for me, not for everybody, but for me, I love being able to watch my kids do stuff they love. That being said, tell me the last time I saw a friend. Like, not a friend that's a friend because we're on the sidelines. And there are genuinely good friends on the sidelines. But like a friend that is a friend because I've created them somehow separate from your life.
Sure.
And I was like, or that I've texted with them. Like, and I was working, dude. Like, just don't be rude, man. Don't be rude. Like, and I think teaching your kids like that two things can be the same too at the same time. Like, we're not being mean by having you contribute to the house or contribute to your lives. It's not, it's you contributing to things that you should be contributing to.
Absolutely.
And it's not you, it's not dumping on you or forcing you to do things. It's just asking you to contribute. Like, I'm not being mean by protecting you when I'm sending you to the car to protect you from me because you were so rude.
Run away.
Run.
I was just like, holy moly.
No, I think that's true. And I think one of the not problems, but what sort of one of the issues we had is, so we've been homeschooling before COVID happened. So we spend a lot of time together.
Yes.
So it was really hard to separate that boundary of when is, homeschool time and when is not homeschool time. And it was sort of kind of all bleeding and melding together. And so it took a lot of effort on all our parts to be like, let's have a little more routine. Let's have a little more, when do we do this and why do we, and kind of create those boundaries. And again, just showing up every day and being consistent was what, is working. When I have to shiv it again, I will. But for now,
I love that word, by the way. I'm totally borrowing that. That's
yeah,
great.
please do. It's my favorite word.
Um, so let's talk about what happens when things go wrong, right? Like you have bad days. We all have bad days. I'm sure you've had setbacks. I'm sure you've had plateaus. I'm sure you've gotten frustrated, felt stuck, all of those things. What what do you do? How do you get through those tougher moments in your journey?
Very carefully. And as I am now in this phase of my life that is called the ugly word perimenopause,
Oh, yes.
I have to be extra careful on how I deal with those, because it's easy to just sort of sink down and not, sort of lock myself away and not want to do anything. And again, it's reminding yourself to show up for you first. Because if you can show up for you, the rest kind of comes in, it kind of lays into place, right? It's the domino effect. But if you can't and you need to take that day, if you need to hide away, allow yourself the permission to do that, whatever that looks like. I'd love to say, take a walk or do, and all of those things are great. But I think sometimes allowing yourself permission to sit in that mess, to ride those messy waves and just be like, today sucks. I'm sorry. Today sucks. Mom can't do any of that. Wife can't do any of that. I'm just, this is where I am. And acknowledge it, and then don't feel guilty about it, because then I promise you the next day, if you've dealt with it, if you sat in it, you're probably not going to feel that way the next day.
Yeah, I think we don't do that enough. And Tova, I know you have a question, and I will let you ask your question in 1 second. I just want to share a story you just reminded me of back before I had kids even. Um, I had left my law career and I was kind of in this twilight zone of what am I going to do with myself. And I had the great privilege of being able to take time off, and I'm so fortunate that I could do that. But I had like a really bad, I don't know, week. I don't know. I was like in a bad place. And I remember telling my husband, I was like, I'm going to lay on the couch and watch TV for this weekend. And I will let you know when I'm done. And he would come in the room and he'd be like, are you done? And I'm like, no, not done. And he would leave. And he would go, like, occasionally he'd like push food at me, you know? But
But
he was
that's
just,
amazing. That's
you
amazing that
know,
you were able to provide that for
I
yourself,
mean, I
right?
was very
Yeah.
privileged to be able to, but it really was like by the end of the weekend, I was like, oh my God, I can't watch any more TV. I need to talk to people. I need to like breathe fresh air, so I got what I needed. Because sometimes we give ourselves, we're like, oh, okay, we're going to take 15 minutes. And that's not always sufficient. Like
That's
that's
not
not enough.
sufficient. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and
Um,
being able to verbalize it, that's huge, because
yeah.
a lot of people just think, oh, what's wrong with, and they go through this shame cycle, which I just abhorrently am against, because your body's obviously telling you what it needs. And so if it needs this right now and you're neglecting that, I call it the inner toddler. Sometimes you have to appease that inner toddler, because if you don't, it's going to rear its ugly head and you're going to have a terrible two tantrum, and then you're not going to know what to do.
Yeah.
Well, and the only thing I was going to say is I remember you talked about that cycle and that shame cycle and or feeling guilty for taking the time. And I remember years ago, and I don't know if it's true, and I don't know if the study was accurate. So who knows? I'm citing something that may or may not be accurate. And it was from like probably 30 years ago. And it was probably from like a Weight Watchers magazine. So take it for what it's worth. But it talked about how when women would treat themselves to like ice cream, like, and I think they probably called it like a guilty pleasure or something absurd. Um, they would then kind of feel like the day was gone. Like they would feel so guilty
Mhm.
that they would just then eat, right, the rest of the day. Whereas men were they didn't carry the guilt and that shame. So they could very easily just have like ice cream and it would end. And I have no idea if any of that is accurate, but I do think this concept of women carrying guilt and shame and having then that not actually like the rest doesn't benefit you. Like maybe 15 minutes, unless you're past the point of burnout. Like
Yeah.
sometimes 15 minutes is really enough. It is a good
Mhm.
reset because, during COVID, we each had a behavior chart. My kids were 4, 6, and 8 at the time. And so we each had little things that we were to do. And mine was to take time outs. I had to take time outs and go for 5 to 10 minutes by myself in my room. And they genuinely helped to go to my room, and shut the door and read a book and be by myself. Because there was a cumulative effect, because I had to do it multiple times a day, or I didn't get my gold star.
Right.
And so, but had I been carrying guilt, then it just would erase the whole effect of that. So I have no idea if that whole thing was true, but I do think there's probably truth in that when women treat themselves, or even, they go away for a girls' weekend or something, then in addition to coming back to probably a lot of catch up, they also have that guilt that they went away, that kind of, not every woman, fortunately, but it often like erases a lot of the benefit of the weekend.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, and if you think about it, we place a lot of demands on ourselves, right? Internally. And then we have the demands of, being a partner. And then we have the demands of our children, right?
Yeah.
And so we have all of this inside pressure that we're just holding on to. And it's this expectation that we need to produce some sort of result for all of these demands that we've put on ourselves. And so when I talk about the, angry toddler, and she's pushed down so much and made to sit quietly with her hands in her laps and her ankles crossed, and made sure she's doing all the proper things because we're there to serve. And again, not in a spiteful way, but we're trying to please everybody else. And that toddler starts to get angry and is like, hello, wait, and there are some thoughts to, you can't let the toddler in, you have to have your discipline and all this. But I think if you don't let her out and let her be noticed every once in a while, I think you're going to get to that burnout stage. I think you're going to get to those feelings of, anger or frustration, and sort of that's just, so it's the domino effect of like, now we have, well, I don't want to. And now we have, well, you're not grateful. And like all of these things, when just let her have the ice cream every once in a while, it might be okay.
Yeah, absolutely. We need to take another quick break. So we'll do that. When we come back, I want to talk about stress, and I want to talk about your sort of plans going forward. But let's take a quick break, everyone, and we will be right back.
Hey there, Pod family. Have you ever wished you could stay in the loop with a little slice of transformation and inspiration delivered straight to your inbox? Well, you're in luck, because now you can. Introducing our fantastic newsletter, your VIP pass to all things exciting and informative. Join our community of growth-minded souls. Get the hottest topics delivered right to your inbox. It's quick, easy, and totally free. Just head over to our website at goboldlyinitiative.com and sign up for our newsletter today. Don't miss out on the next big thing. Stay connected with us. Subscribe now and get ready for some big, bold love.
Welcome back to the show. So before the break, I mentioned I want to talk about stress. It's something you brought up way back in the beginning of this conversation, that, the cumulative effect of stress on your health. And I want to just like open the discussion to talking about how you started to recognize that stress played a role in your health, and then what specifically are you doing to help sort of combat the stress. I mean, life is stressful. The world is stressful. So we all need tools and tricks and techniques to help us relieve some of that stress. So talk to us about, how you're managing that.
100%. And first, let me just say, I do not subscribe to the trying to obtain a stress-free life, because that's just not existent. So we do need these tools, like you talked about, of how to deal with the next messy storm that's coming, and how you can combat that and be stronger for the next stressful event that's going to come, right? And so I think stress can kind of be a blanket term. It's sort of thrown on everything to just sort of cover your mood, your emotions, your, all of these things. But it's actually a physicality of your body trying to get your attention, because it can't consume any more stress, right? When you start to feel these things, and even before the breaking point, there are little things. I had, before I even knew I was in perimenopause, I started to get frozen shoulder. And after speaking to a lot of my doctors, one of the triggers of frozen shoulder being perimenopause, but is stress, because we're holding all of those emotions, all that tense, everything we're holding inside. And if you don't have any outlet or even recognize it to get it out, it's going to manifest in some way. So that was sort of, having to recognize, okay, I'm not made of steel. I am going to have these emotions. I am going to have these things. What do I do with that? So I had to find the perfect formula for me. And it's going to be different for everybody. But the first thing that I say is start with something that makes you feel joy, whatever that is. And it can be, like Tova mentioned, the cup of coffee that she likes. And just recognizing it and sort of acknowledging, I like this. I'm going to enjoy this. This is something that I'm going to sort of give, a grateful or a gratitude nugget for, and then I can move on. And if you start to build that bank of gratitude, that sort of gets you to the next step of now, okay, is it a walk I need? Is it, companionship? I found a lot, like Tova was talking about, making a connection with friends. I think since COVID, all of us are sort of just hungry for real connection, real, just, raw friendship of people. We're all going through something. We're all going through a mess, and just connecting on a different level that isn't fake or, like she was saying on the sidelines, maybe it's not very deep. I think we want something deep. And so I felt I had to nourish that. I had to find that. So a book club, connecting with old friends that I hadn't connected in a while, just stuff like that. And it was like, okay, build upon that. Then the next one for me, and I will totally call myself out on, is I needed routine. I needed routine to give me stability. And that actually made my nervous system more calm, believe it or not, right? All the kids grow up and they're like, I'm going to do whatever I want. And that sounds good on the surface. But if you're like me, you need a little bit of consistency, which then grew to discipline, which then grew to, okay, I've accepted myself in this way. And all those little things on top of the breath work, on top of, I, got into yoga. I really got into lifting weights. And there, that just brings me a lot of joy because I think part of that anger that I'm just able to get out with lifting something heavy, it really helped. But you have to find whatever that special concoction is for you, definitely. And take your time with it, put time into it, put effort into it so you can find that.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons we're always telling people to try new things, right? Not just that it creates good stuff for your brain and it's expanding and it helps pique your curiosity and stuff, but it's also like, dating hobbies basically and figuring out what
try it
hobby
all.
is
Yeah.
right for you. So
yeah. And I am not by any means, I hear a lot of my friends and the people that I talk to, they talk about what a rush they get after doing an exercise. Okay, that's not me. I actually don't like to exercise. I will call myself out. But what I found was I had less anger, my frustration tank was slower to build up when I was, pushing and pulling heavy things. And it was like, okay, I can get into this, but I'm certainly not the one that's like, oh, I have such a high after exercise. No, I don't. I don't want to do that.
I have a question, and it's going a little backwards, but I'm just sort of interested in how you existed. And so this is like a really open-ended question. So answer it how you'd like. But there was a big chunk of your life between getting diagnosed with diabetes when you were 15, and then when you had this kind of wake-up call with your heart attack, where I imagine that you were, it sounds like doing the best you could and dealing with anger, but maybe not dealing with anger. And I was just wondering, how would you describe that time? I know it's like the most open-ended question, but it's just
No.
it's big and it's wide, and you have two kids who are sort of entering that, or one's in that phase of their life and one's entering. And so if you want to answer it, like what advice you give them, or just how would you describe it? I don't know. I'm kind of intrigued because it's a lot of your life. And I'd love to learn more about it.
Yeah, I mean, it was messy, right? There was it was completely chaotic, and I didn't give it the acknowledgement that I should have. And so, when I was diagnosed at 15, I won't give the year, 90s. um, my parents, there was not a lot of education, right? They were given a bottle of insulin and a bag of syringes and said, make sure you keep your blood sugar under control. And that was sort of the extent of the education that we had on it. Then they sent us a dietitian, and the dietitian subscribed to the American Diabetic Association standards, which it's convoluted. It was very difficult to understand. It was exchange two starches for this carb and exchange a protein for it just, and it's not something any 15-year-old's going to sit down and try to understand, right?
Yeah.
And so it was just always a very confusing thing. And again, it was like, maybe if I just ignore it, it'll go away, right? And, then you enter in the hormones, which, is bad in of itself, but then you have this chronic illness. And it was like, I wasn't educated about it. There was no support groups or anything like that they have now. And again, my parents, I mean, my mother was a nurse, my father was a police officer. They were, I mean, I'm Gen X. We were latchkey kids. We were,
Yeah.
good enough to get home on our own, right? And so it was just, figuring out whatever I could with the little education that I had. And then sort of getting into my 20s and being like, okay, I guess I need to be responsible for myself now. And then going to the doctor and thinking, okay, I'm going to start taking this seriously, then being told I shouldn't have children. And it was like, why am I ever going to go back to the doctor again? They're just full of bad news, and then trying to navigate as a young adult in my 20s. What does that look like? It didn't look like I was very self-conscious. I had sort of, because I wasn't taught how to do it correctly. So a lot of the times I would give the injection of insulin in my thigh, and I started to get bruises because I was going to the same spot because, being told, hey, rotate or go to your stomach. At the time, couldn't imagine ejecting anything into my stomach, but my thigh seemed okay. So they got a lot of abuse. It was just these things as young. I mean, even in your, early 20s, you're still kind of a dumb kid, or at least I was, and you just don't think of these things or what you should be doing for yourself. So I didn't know. And then, like I said, I got married at my second marriage at 30, and then my first child was at 31, and it was like, okay, well, now it's momhood time. So everything that I was thrown into that. And it was like this thing that's, diabetes is just going to sit up on the shelf. And, when it rears its ugly head, okay, I'll pay attention to it. But when it doesn't, I'm not going to pay attention. And that, unfortunately, that's a terrible, terrible, terrible way to deal with this. But I didn't know any better. I didn't know any better. And thankfully, by the grace of God, I was given a second chance. But yeah, it was messy. It sucked, to be honest.
It's hard enough to navigate life in your 20s without something, like a chronic illness that is a complicated chronic illness that you need to, like, as you're saying, like all the recommendations are not clear. It's hard to navigate. You're kind of like, I'm in my 20s. I'm living my life. I'm whatever. I'm invincible. Because that's what we think when we're young, right?
Absolutely.
We're just
nothing bad's gonna happen to us. Are you kidding?
So I think I just think it's fantastic that you've made this like transition, right? Like, so many of us get stuck in that denial phase of like, if I can't see it, it can't see me, and it's not gonna like be a problem. I'm just gonna look away from it. And it's easy to do that with feelings. It's easy to do that with physical issues. It's easy to like just sort of put it in a pretty box, as Tova and I like to say, and put it on a shelf and be like, oh, I'll look at that later.
Well, and I didn't want to be different. I didn't want to be different, right? And so the insulin started to put on a little weight gain for me in my 20s. And I absolutely didn't want, none of my friends were dealing with that. So I didn't know at the time, but diabulimia, I would restrict my insulin and still eat whatever I wanted. So my blood sugar would raise and then the weight would come off. Not knowing that was the title of what I was doing. I just was so desperate to be like everybody else in your 20s and not have to deal with weight. So it was just, I thought I created it and invented it. Could come to find out that's a very common thing in that world. Had no idea. Nobody was talking about that. I mean, really, nobody talks about eating disorders to begin with. But now it's like, I didn't want to be different at all. My friends would go out and, have their drinks and be fine. I would have one drink and be throwing up and wonder what's wrong with me, not realizing that I'm literally internalizing all this alcohol that's turning straight to sugar. Yeah. And then I don't have enough insulin to cover it. And just recognizing like, why am I different? Why is this so hard? Why can't I just go out and have a drink and be like everybody else? Not realizing again at the time, everybody else is going through their own stuff. They are, may have the appearance that everything's fine. It really isn't. But I didn't know to do that at that age.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't have a question.
Okay.
Maybe
I
have
thought you were
50
going to say
questions.
something.
No.
Yeah, I think it is the idea of fitting in and like a curated life and all of that stuff is it's such an easy trap to fall in your teens, your 20s, that like everyone, is happy and you're not, or everyone's got all of this stuff and you don't have it. And it's easy to fall into that trap. So I can certainly see how that happened. But you've turned the corner now and you're struggling through perimenopause along with me and maybe Tova. We're not sure yet. I think so. And the rest
that
of our
sucks in and of
the rest of
itself.
our generation. So let's talk a little bit about that. And then I know we need to wrap up because we're getting long, but like what impact is that having, is the perimenopause experience having on your sort of coping mechanisms, on your health, on your nutrition, on your mental health, all those things?
Yeah. So one thing I can say, luckily I learned, I'm stubborn, so it took a while, but when this was brought to my attention, I took it seriously. I kind of, rolled my sleeves up and was like, okay, what is this going to look like? What is my part and my responsibility in it? How can I minimize whatever the effects are going to be? What do I need to change? Those kinds of things, which was a completely different approach in my life than I had ever taken about anything else. So that was, almost comforting myself that I was able to like, okay, have your pity party for a day or two and then roll, figure it out and buckle down and what do you need to do? And, the things that I have learned, it's almost comforting because at least I know, while I own my own crazy, a lot of it isn't me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's been a little comforting. And I don't know that I'd be able to say that if I didn't have the education behind it to back it up. And so little tweaks of like, okay, getting rid of the perfumes and the scented stuff and just making, sure that I'm not having an exurgent of estrogen and sort of, trying to balance with progesterone and even discovering testosterone and like all these other things, it actually empowers me. Because I now have the information I needed, which before I didn't. So I can take that and be like, okay, I might make a mistake. I might not have it all figured out, but at least I know the trajectory. And if I have to shiv it, I will.
Tova,
I
do
think
you
that
have
might,
any?
I was going to say that might be my favorite take home of this entire thing is the word shivet.
It's fantastic. I think, if I could, and I want to wrap us up and do our quick response questions, but if I could just put a theme around everything you're talking about, it's that setting boundaries, setting yourself up for success requires setting boundaries, requires setting, rules around your life that make sense for you, but also to like give your kids safety and security, to give yourself a sense of safety and security, to understand, like getting all that knowledge that you're getting is setting a boundary. Like I'm not going to, with yourself, I'm not going to slip back into that denial role. I'm going to just get the information and we'll see what happens and maybe I'll shiv it, but like at least I'll have the knowledge to be able to make an informed decision. And all of that is really about boundary setting and being willing to look at the world in an honest way and make it clear to yourself that these are the rules and this is how I'm going to function and this is how I'm going to take care of myself. And that's I think that's important. I've not seen, like, we've not had a conversation where boundary setting has been so clear to me. I love, if I could say it one more time, I love boundaries. It's my favorite thing.
Well, and I'll just add like not sticking your head in the sand. And I
Yeah.
think that so many of us want to just kick the can down the road. Like, I'll just worry about this later. And you've had these kind of three health experiences with the diabetes where you spent like a long time being like, I'm just going to stick my head in the sand. And you've described it as chaotic and messy.
Yes.
And then you had another experience where you wanted to, and your daughter very clearly was like, nope, you're not going to do that. Um, and now you have this experience with perimenopause where you're like, I actually feel confident and have the tools to say, it's okay that I don't know. It's okay that this is crazy. So I'm going to learn. And like, you're having, you know, a much less, I mean, none of it's fun, but like,
Right.
yeah, but at least
No.
you're like, I'm capable of handling what I'm going to learn, even if I don't like what I learn.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and I can handle going through this, and I feel comfortable going through this. And I think it's like, it is boundaries 100%, but you're kind of like this great example of like, none of us benefit from ignoring what's happening in our lives, especially to our
100%.
body.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Well,
I love that.
We are going to ask you on a lighter note 5 quick response questions.
Okay.
And I am not allowed to ask follow-up questions. And you
Does
just
that kill you?
Yes, it does. If you can't tell, I like talking. You just answer whatever comes to mind first.
Okay.
So if you're ready, I will get the questions. Okay. Question number 1. What is your favorite way to unwind after a long day?
Oh, it's you. I'm gonna totally call myself out. It's somewhere between binge watching something terrible. Any Bravo show might be there, just to kind of just escape for a second. So yeah, I would say that. I should probably have a better answer, but I'm gonna be honest.
I'm not allowed to ask follow-up questions, but I will admit that I love dating shows. I watch them all
Okay,
the time.
see? Okay.
All the time. It's garbage for my brain. Question number 2. What's one thing on your bucket list that you haven't done yet?
One thing that I haven't done, I really want to go to the Florida Keys. I don't know why. I feel this year. I look at pictures all the time. Like, it's calling me. I want to go.
Gotta listen to the gut. Number 3, what's your go-to comfort food?
So since becoming carnivore, my go-to is a really nice tenderloin steak. And if I can spoil myself with that, that's what I'm gonna eat.
Nice. Number 4, if you could instantly master any skill, what would it be?
AI.
Love it.
I don't want to be left behind.
That's fair. That's fair. All right. And our last question. Can you describe yourself in 3 words?
Crazy, messy, and kind.
I love it. We are so grateful that you came on the show today. I have a million more questions for you. I really just enjoyed this conversation. I want to ask you so many more things. But can you share with our listeners where they can find you if they want to follow along your podcast, if they want to see you on socials, all that stuff?
Yeah, so it's Everything's Messy Wellness on Instagram, Everything's Mess on TikTok and X. I have a website, Everything's Messy Wellness. I actually do wellness coaching for newly diagnosed type 1 diabetics, and just anyone that's looking to create boundaries or some things like that. I have some stuff as well, and some free PDF downloads for hormones for women that are starting this wonderful transition, as we like to say.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Well, again, Tova, do you have anything else you want to add?
No, just echoing what you said. It's been wonderful talking to you.
Yeah, I enjoyed this so much. Thank you. And you had mentioned you like to talk. You wouldn't be a podcaster if
right. If I didn't like to
talk.
I know.
So
I know.
I love it. Yeah.
All right. Well, like I said, thrilled to have you on the show. We appreciate it. And for all our listeners, we will be back next week with another episode of season 12. Until then, set some boundaries, everyone, and we'll talk to you later.
Thanks so much for listening to We Go Boldly podcast. We know you're busy and we love spending time with you.
If you enjoyed this week's episode, let us know. Head to Apple Podcasts right now to rate and review our show. While you're there, be sure to click that subscribe button.
Want more us time? Follow us on all the socials at Go Boldly Together.
Want even more us time? As in all the coaching pizzazz. Find us at goboldlyinitiative.com for all the info.
We will be back with more excitement, research, and deep thoughts next week.
Until then, keep on being the bold, brave, amazing people we know you already are.
The Power Moms Network, empowering moms to lift the world.